Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to admit, when we usually sit down to do these, I've got this massive stack of articles, maybe a new nonfiction bestseller, or, a pile of academic research.
Right.
But today I'm holding something that looks, well, deceptively simple.
It looks like a few sheets of printer paper.
It is exactly that. It's a stack of printouts from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, specifically entries that we accessed on January 24th, 2026.
Okay.
And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, did I just tune in to listen to two people read the dictionary?
Which, to be fair, is a valid concern.
It is. But the mission today isn't just to define words. We found 5 specific words, all starting with the letter A, that act like these little linguistic portals. We are going to look at Aegis, airy, aesthetic, affable, and affected.
And the reason we picked these 5 isn't just because they start with A. It's because when you actually dig into the notes, the etymologies, the history, the usage, you realize these aren't just definitions, they're stories.
Exactly. We are going to unpack how these words have traveled through history. We're going to see how meanings have shifted from things like, goat skins and open fields, all the way to government sponsorship and high-rise real estate.
It's a bit of a linguistic treasure hunt.
Yeah.
We're going to trace the breadcrumbs from mythology to, modern psychology.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start with a word that I feel like usually lives in the headers of very, very boring documents.
Chuckles, okay.
The word is Aegis, spelled A-E-G-I-S.
And pronounced either Aegis or Aegis.
Right. Now, when I hear this word today, in 2026, it's almost always in some context of authority. You hear about a program running under the aegis of the United Nations or
a new wing opening under the aegis of the museum, something like that.
Yes, it's a heavyweight word. If you look at the definition we have here, it means protection, defense, a controlling influence.
Sponsorship, really. It basically says you are safe here because a large, powerful institution is watching over you.
It's the word you use when you want to sound official. We are under the aegis of the Constitution. It feels, sterile, almost legalistic.
It does, but this is where the treasure hunt begins.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Did You Know section in the source material, the origin of this word is, it's messy.
It's so messy.
And it is definitely not sterile.
This part blew my mind. The source says the word comes from the Greek Aegis.
Yeah.
And that literally translates to goat skin.
Yes.
Oh,
skin.
So, okay, help me bridge this gap. How do we get from the aegis of the federal government to a goat's skin?
Well, we have to go all the way back to Greek mythology. The aegis wasn't just any old animal pelt. It was a very specific, legendary object.
Okay.
The myth tells us it was a protective cloak made from the skin of the goat Amalthea.
And Amalthea wasn't just a random goat, right?
No, she was the nurse goat who suckled Zeus when he was an infant, hiding from his father.
Okay, I just want to pause on that image. The king of the gods, Zeus, is walking around wearing the skin of his childhood nurse goat as a cloak.
Mythology is rarely subtle. But yes, essentially. Because it was the skin of this divine nurse, it offered the ultimate protection. It was supposedly impenetrable.
But the source mentions it wasn't always a cloak, though.
Right, the visual shifts depending on the story. Sometimes it's a cloak worn by Zeus or his daughter Athena, but other times the aegis is depicted as a shield.
A shield.
Specifically, a shield fashioned by the blacksmith god Hephaestus. And this is where it gets really intense. Sometimes this shield is described as bearing the severed head of the Gorgon Medusa.
Wow. Okay, so on one hand you have a magical goat cloak. On the other, you've got a shield with a monster's head that can turn people to stone.
Exactly. Whether it's the goat or the Gorgon, the message is the same. This is the ultimate defense. Nothing can get through this.
So when the word first came into English, were people using it metaphorically?
No, and that's the interesting part. The source notes that when it entered English in the 15th century, it was a literal noun used to describe that specific mythological object.
So if you were talking about an aegis in the 1400s, you were actually talking about Zeus's armor.
You were. It took a while to water it down.
How long?
About 400 years. It wasn't until the late 19th century that the meaning evolved into the abstract concept we use today. We kept the idea of impenetrable protection and sponsorship, but we dropped the physical shield.
I love that evolution. It's like we've traded the magical shield for the corporate contract, but we kept the name. It's a reminder that even our driest bureaucratic terms have these wild, bloody roots.
It really shows that language is just layers of history compressed together. We are still invoking Zeus in a way, every time we sign a sponsorship deal.
All right, so we've established protection. Let's move to habitation. Where do we go once we're safe under the Aegis?
We go up.
The next word is airy, spelled A-E-R-I-E.
And this one is a choose-your-own-adventure for pronunciation. You can say air-e, air-air-e, or airy.
I've always said airy because it makes me think of the air, which makes sense given the definition.
It does. The primary definition here is a bird's nest, specifically for a bird of prey, like an eagle or a hawk built high up on a cliff or a mountaintop.
But we don't just use it for birds anymore. I feel like I've seen this word popping up in luxury real estate listings.
You absolutely have. The source material actually quotes a recent example of an $85 million Erie, setting a price record downtown.
And high-rise city apartments. It seems like any condo above the 40th floor is suddenly an Erie.
It's great branding. Apartments sound pedestrian. Erie sounds dominant. It implies you are an eagle looking down on the world. Seclusion and height.
But here is where it gets really interesting or really confusing, depending on how you look at it. The etymology.
Yes, this is a classic linguistic twist. You'd assume the word comes from something meaning high or sky.
Of course.
But the word traces back to the Latin word ager.
And for those of us who don't speak Latin,
Ager means field.
A field, like flat ground.
Flat, open agricultural ground.
Okay, walk me through this. How on earth do we get from a word meaning flat field to a word meaning nest on a cliff? That seems like the literal opposite direction.
It is a journey. It's like a game of telephone that played out over centuries. It started with the Latin ager, meaning field. That evolved into the old French word air.
Air.
Now, air had a broader meaning. It could mean an open space or a place of origin, or even the stock or quality of a family.
Okay, so we moved from field to open space. I can see that connection.
Right, so eventually, via medieval Latin, that concept of an open space or breeding place was applied to birds of prey. Eagles need open space to hunt. They have a specific place of origin.
So the word migrated with the birds.
Exactly. It stopped referring to the ground itself and started referring to the nature of the dwelling. The word literally traveled upward from the flat field to the high cliff.
That is fascinating. So when we call a penthouse an airy, we are, in some roundabout way, using a word that used to mean a dirt field.
In a roundabout way, yes. And this usage isn't new. The source notes that John Milton used it in Paradise Lost way back in 1667. He wrote, "On cliffs and cedar tops, their eyries build."
Eyries, with a Y.
Yes, the spelling varies, but the intent is the same. Milton was tapping into that majestic, high-up imagery just like a modern real estate agent does.
Speaking of imagery, I have to bring up this little side note from the source that made me laugh. The rhymes.
Oh, the sonic texture section.
Yeah. I guess eerie is a hard word to rhyme if you're writing poetry. The dictionary lists adversary, arbitrary, and berry.
Beriberi, the thiamine deficiency disease.
The very same. So if any of our listeners are trying to write a poem connecting a high-rise apartment, an enemy, and a vitamin deficiency, you're all set.
Huggles. I'll keep that in mind. It shows the word has a very specific light sound to it. Sounds high, doesn't it?
It does. It feels light. Okay, let's come down from the cliffs. We've talked about protection and shelter. Now I want to get a little more cerebral.
We're moving to the mind.
The next word is aesthetic.
Ah, yes. This is a word that is doing a lot of heavy lifting in our culture right now.
It really is. I feel like everything is about the aesthetic. I like the aesthetic of this coffee shop, or that movie has a great aesthetic.
Right. And in common usage, we use it as an adjective to mean pleasing in appearance. It's just a synonym for beautiful or stylish.
But the dictionary entry here reminds us that it's actually a lot deeper than that.
It is. Before it was a vibe, it was and is a branch of philosophy. The definition is the branch of philosophy dealing with the nature of beauty, art, and taste.
That sounds intense.
It is intense. It asks the big questions. What is beauty? Is it objective-like? Is this painting beautiful because it follows certain rules? Or is it subjective? Is it beautiful just because I like it?
And the etymology gives us a clue to the answer, doesn't it?
It does. The word was borrowed from the German aesthetisch, but that comes from the Greek aesthetikos. And this is the key takeaway. The Greek root doesn't mean art. It means of sense perception.
Sense perception.
Exactly. It's about the raw data your senses are taking in. It wasn't until the 18th century that philosophers like Alexander Baumgarten and Immanuel Kant really co-opted the term.
I see.
They were trying to figure out how our minds process that sense data into a judgment of beauty.
So when I say I like the aesthetic of this room, I'm not just saying it's pretty. I'm basically channeling Immanuel Kant. I'm saying My sense perception of this environment creates a pleasing judgment.
In a way, you are. You're participating in a centuries-old philosophical debate.
Now, there is a really specific grammatical quirk in the notes here that I think is a great life hack for sounding smart.
The singular versus plural distinction.
Yes, because I think I use them interchangeably, but the dictionary says there is a rule.
There is. If you are talking about the field of study, the philosophy, it's treated as singular. So you would say aesthetics is a complex subject.
Okay.
Just like you would say physics is hard, not physics are hard.
Right, that makes sense.
But if you're talking about the qualities of a specific object, the things that make it look good, it becomes plural. The example in the source is, they appreciate the aesthetics of the gemstones.
So aesthetics is my major, but the aesthetics of that car are terrible.
Precisely. It allows you to be very precise about whether you're discussing a theory or a physical object.
Speaking of physical objects, we have to touch on the medical definition included here.
Aesthetic plastic surgery.
Right. The definition clarifies that this is surgery performed to enhance a person's appearance, rather than to correct a defect or function.
It connects right back to that Greek root. It's surgery designed to modify sense perception. It's not about how the body works biologically. It's about how the body is perceived by the senses of others.
It's fascinating how the word has traveled from how I feel the world to how the world sees me.
Which is a perfect transition, actually, because our last two words are entirely about how the world sees us.
We've covered protection, home, and beauty. Now we're looking at behavior, the social animal.
We have two A words left, affable and affected. And what I love about this pairing is that they're almost polar opposites on the spectrum of human connection.
Let's start with the positive one, affable.
Affable. Definition: pleasant, at ease, friendly.
We all know someone like this, an affable host, someone who just makes you feel comfortable immediately.
It's a warm word. And the etymology is deceptively simple. It comes from the Latin affar, which simply means to speak to.
So an affable person is just someone you can speak to.
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
They are approachable. But the expert notes in the source connect this to a whole web of other words that really deepens the meaning.
This was the part that surprised me. What else is it related to?
Well, aphoria is related to the word fable, which is a spoken story. It's related to fate, which is that which has been spoken by the gods.
Okay.
And it is related to infant.
Infant, like a baby.
Yes. Think about the word structure, infans. The prefix in means not. So an infant is literally one who does not speak.
That is wild. So affable and infant are linguistic cousins separated by the ability to talk.
Exactly. Being an infant is defined by the lack of speech. Being affable is defined by the ease of speech. It frames social friendliness as this fundamental human capability, the ability to converse.
That is a beautiful connection. But there's a catch with affable. The definition is nice, but the usage notes in the source point out something a bit more complicated.
This was the did you know section about gender aid.
Yeah. The dictionary explicitly states that, according to their records, the word affable is far more likely to be used to describe a man than a woman.
Which is really interesting data, because if you look at the definition, pleasant, at ease, there's nothing inherently male about it.
Nothing at all. And the dictionary goes out of its way to say, this should not be taken as evidence that men are friendlier. It's strictly a usage bias in our literature and journalism.
It really makes you wonder why that is. Why do English speakers reach for affable when describing a man, but maybe something else for a woman?
I wonder if it's because affable has a sort of statesman-like quality.
That's a good theory. We might use words like warm or bubbly or sweet for women. But affable suggests a guy holding court at a dinner party, telling stories, maybe connecting back to that fable root.
It feels like a clubbable word. It's a fascinating look at the hidden coding in our language. We think we're just picking a synonym for friendly, but the data shows we're following these gendered patterns without even realizing it.
It definitely raises a question about how we perceive and describe friendliness differently, depending on who we're talking about.
Now let's flip the coin. If affable is being natural and easy to speak to, our final word is the exact opposite.
Affected.
Affected. And just to be clear for the listener, we aren't talking about being affected by the weather. We're talking about the adjective.
Right, the personality trait. The definition here is not natural or genuine or assumed artificially.
The synonyms listed are great. Strained, mock, unnatural, fake.
I love the examples the source lists. affected laughter. You can just hear that, right? That polite, hollow laugh at a party that doesn't reach the eyes.
Or an affected interest in art, pretending to care about the aesthetics just to seem sophisticated.
Totally.
The visual that really got me was the example of holding a teacup with a pinky extended.
Yes. That is the quintessential example of affected behavior.
Why do people do that?
Well, it's a signal, isn't it? It serves no function. In fact, it makes the cup harder to hold. But people do it to signal, I am elegant. I am upper class.
But because it's a performance, it has the opposite effect. Instead of looking elegant, they look well affected.
Exactly. It fails because it's not genuine. And linguistically, this makes perfect sense. Affected is the past participle of the verb affect, which in this sense means to put on a pretense.
So let's contrast them. The affable person is easy to speak to because they are comfortable, they're inviting you in. The affected person is putting on a show. They are building a barrier of artificiality.
That's a perfect synthesis. One is about connection, the other is about impression.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a lot of ground today. We went from goat skins to pinky fingers.
We did. But I think if you look at the trajectory of these 5 words, it's almost like a map of human development.
Break that down for me.
Well, look at where we started. Aegis, that's survival. You are defenseless, so you need a shield, a goat skin, a protector.
Right. Survival is step 1.
Then we move to airy. You need a home. You move from the open fields up to the cliffs. You secure a dwelling.
Shelter.
Once you have protection and shelter, you have the luxury to think. You start contemplating aesthetics. You worry about beauty, art, and philosophy.
And finally,
you have to exist in a society. You have to navigate other people. And that's where you make the choice. Are you affable? Do you connect? Or are you affected? Do you pretend?
that is a fantastic way to look at it. It's not just a dictionary, it's a hierarchy of human needs, told through the letter A.
Words are artifacts. They carry the history of how we've viewed protection, nature, and each other for centuries. When you use a word like Aegis, you are invoking a 3,000-year-old myth, whether you realize it or not.
And when you use a word like affable, you might be tapping into a social habit that's been around for generations.
Exactly. And that's why these deep dives are so valuable. It forces us to stop and look at the tools we use every single day, our words.
So here's a final thought for you to mull over. We talked about how affable is statistically used more for men. I want you to listen to the conversations around you this week. Listen to the news, listen to your colleagues.
What should they look for?
Look for those subtle splits. What other neutral personality words seem to stick to one gender? Are there words for leadership or intelligence or emotionality that we unconsciously assign to one group over another?
It's a question worth asking. Once you start noticing the coding, you can't unsee it.
And in the meantime, maybe try to be a little more affable and a little less affected.
Sound advice.
Thank you for joining us on this linguistic treasure hunt. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Goodbye, everyone.